The sixth matter. This is about the page of the future and especially the question of the Sharia. 4 points have to be considered in this matter. The first, even if he is exceptional, one person can become expert and proficient in only 4 or 5 sciences. The second point, the same speech differs according to who says it. So, just as it may point to the superficiality and ignorance of one person, it may indicate the skill and proficiency of another, although the words are the same. For one of them looks to the source and conclusion of what he says, and its context and what precedes it. He thinks of it in relation to its brothers, the other things said, and places it appropriately. He employs it most aptly and seeks out fertile ground in which to sow it. It is clear from this that he is a singular speaker and has mastered the subject about which he is speaking. All the concluding phrases of Qur'anic verses related to the sciences and what they have gleaned are of the above sort. The third point, due to the perfecting of ways and means, many things that are now commonplace and even toys for children 2 centuries ago were considered marvels. So whatever preserves its youth, freshness, and novelty over these long centuries must surely be extraordinary and unique. The fourth point, guidance is beneficial only when commensurate with the intellectual capacity of the majority of the people. And the great majority are common people, and the common people are not capable of contemplating the sheer truth. They are accustomed to seeing it clothed only in the dress of their familiar imaginings. Because of this, the Qur'an depicts such truths in allegorical form with metaphors and similes, and it protects the mass of people who have not advanced from falling into the abyss of error. Thus, it is vague and obscure in matters that they necessarily believe to be contrary to actuality, since they conceive of them as they appear to their external senses, yet it still makes allusion to and indicates the truth. If you have grasped these points, now consider this. The Islamic religion and Sharia are founded on rational proof and are the sum and substance of the branches of knowledge that comprise the vital essence of all the basic sciences, the science of refining the spirit, and of training the heart, and of educating the conscience, and the science of physical training, and domestic science, and the science of local government, and that of international relations, and the legal sciences, and the science of human relations, and that of social behavior, and so on and so forth. Moreover, the Sharia explains and elucidates where is necessary or needed, and is concise where this is not necessary or people's minds are not ready or the times do not allow, and lays down principles that can be elaborated, deduced, and expanded through consultation and the exercise of reason. At the present time, all these sciences, or even a third of them after 1,300 years, having grown through the meeting of minds and the expansion of their results, could not be found in a single person, even in civilized places and among clever people. So whoever digs out his conscience with fairness will confirm that the Sharia is always beyond human power, and was particularly so at that time. And he will endorse the statement, "You haven't been able to do it, and you won't be able to." Virtue is true virtue when it is acknowledged even by enemies. For the American philosopher Carlyle quoted the famous German literary figure Goethe, who asked after close study of the truths of the Qur'an, could the civilized world be further advanced within the bonds of Islam? And he told himself, yes, indeed, for in one respect scholars now benefit from it. Carlyle said too that Islam appeared like a flaming light and devoured the religions of the time. And it had the right to do so, for it contained nothing of the vain janglings of some of the Christian sects or the rumors and idle wire drawings of the Jews. He confirmed the meaning of the verse. Then produce a surah like thereunto, but if you cannot, then fear the fire. If you were to ask, the Qur'an and likewise its expounder, I mean hadiths, have only taken summaries from all the sciences, but isn't it possible for a single individual to comprehend numerous summaries? You would be told, through their apt positioning and fitting use in fertile ground, in matters that are only hinted at, as we indicated in the second point above, such summaries reveal like glass a full cognizance of the science in question and complete proficiency in it. So, the summary becomes like the science, and it would not be possible for such a person as you mentioned to comprehend it. Now, understand that the conclusion of the above arguments is that firstly you should bear in mind the following rules. One person cannot be a specialist in a plethora of sciences. The same speech or words differ when uttered by two different people. When uttered by one, they will be gold, and when spoken by the other, they will be coal. The sciences result from the meeting of minds and are perfected with the passage of time. Many matters that were theoretical in the past are now commonplace. To compare the past and present is a false comparison. The difference between them is too great. Due to their simplicity and candor, desert dwellers cannot hide trickery and deception, as they may be concealed beneath the veil of civilization. Many of the sciences result only from instilling customs in human nature and teaching it events and circumstances. When the time and environment are favorable, the light of man's vision cannot penetrate the future, and he cannot pursue its particular circumstances. Just as human life has a natural span which will come to an end, so too laws have a natural lifespan which comes to an end. Of course, in terms of both time and place, the environment is vastly influential on people's circumstances. Very many wonders of the past have become commonplace through the perfecting of means. Human intelligence, even if exceptional, is not capable of creating a science and perfecting it all at once. The science is rather like a child. Its development is gradual. Now that you have settled these matters in your head and can picture them, free yourself from the fancies of the present and the delusions of its environment, and plunge into the sea of time from the shore of this century. Then pass under the sea till you emerge at the age of bliss, and behold the Arabian Peninsula. Raise your head and dress yourself with the ideas that time serves for you, and take a look at the boundless desert. What appears to you first is a single person who, although without helper or power, is challenging the whole world on his own. He is disputing everyone. He is bearing on his shoulders a truth more glorious than the globe. He is holding in his hands a Sharia that guarantees the happiness of all men. This Sharia of his is as though the sum and substance of all the divine sciences and the sciences of reality. It is living like a skin rather than like clothes, and expands as the human potentialities unfold, producing the fruits of happiness in this world and the next. It orders the affairs of humankind as if all men were the members of a single gathering. If its laws were to be asked from where they had come and where they were headed, they would reply through the tone of their miraculousness, "We come from pre-eternal divine speech, and we shall accompany human thought through all eternity. When the world ends, we shall apparently part from men in respect of the religious obligations, but we shall always accompany them through the mystery of our meanings, and shall nourish their spirits and assist and guide them." So now, doesn't what you have witnessed up to here recite to you the verse with its taunting comment? Then produce a surah like thereunto, but if you cannot, and of a surety you cannot. Now consider this. The verse, "And if you are in doubt as to what we have revealed," indicates that because some people are heedless of what the lawgiver intends in guiding the mass of people and are ignorant of the necessity of offering guidance commensurate with their mental capacity, they fall into doubt, the source of which is three matters. The first, they say the existence of allegorical verses and obscurities in the Qur'an is contrary to its miraculousness, which is based on eloquence, and eloquence is based on clarity of expression. The second, they say the Qur'an is vague and general concerning the truths of creation and the physical sciences, but this is contrary to its way and method, which is to teach and guide. The third, they say some of the Qur'an's literal meanings tend to be contrary to rational proof, so may be opposed to reality, and this is contrary to its veraciousness. The answer: success is from Allah alone. O you doubters, listen to this. What you suppose to be causes of defect, in reality, are truthful witnesses to the mystery of the Qur'an's miraculousness. Answer to the first doubt, which is the existence of allegories and obscurities. The Qur'an's guidance is for all people, and most of them are common people. In matters of guidance, the minority follows the majority, for when the common people are addressed, the educated classes can benefit from it and receive their share. But if the reverse is true, the common people are deprived of their share. The mass of people cannot free their minds from what they are accustomed to and imaginary things, and are therefore unable to apprehend sheer truths and abstract ideas except through the telescope of their imaginations and by depicting things familiar to them. However, when doing this, they should not fix their attention on the apparent forms of the things, lest it necessitates something impossible, like their embodiments or having sights. They should look beyond the form to the truths behind them. For example, the masses can conceive of the reality of divine disposal over the universe in the form of a king seated on the throne of his power, holding sway over his dominions. It is for this reason that the Qur'an chooses to use a metonymy in the verse, the most gracious, established on the throne of his almightiness. Since the feelings of the mass of people are thus, it is imperative according to eloquence and guidance that their understanding is taken into account, and their feelings are respected, and their intellects are deferred to, and allowance is made for their ideas. Like someone who speaks with a child has to come down to his level so that he can get the child to understand in a friendly manner. The literary devices and styles of the Qur'an in such places that show regard for the mass of people are called divine condescension to human minds. It is to put people's minds at ease. For this reason, it sets the forms depicted by the allegorical verses before the people's eyes like telescopes. Haven't you seen how most of the eloquent literati use metaphors to depict subtle meanings or to portray disparate ideas? Thus, the allegorical verses are figures of speech of an abstruse kind, for they depict abstruse truths. As for their being obscure expressions, this is due either to the subtlety and profundity of what they signify, and the conciseness and loftiness of the style, and the obscurities of the Qur'an are of this sort, or to the ambiguity of the words and tangles expressions, which is contrary to eloquence, and the Qur'an is exempt from this. So, now, you skeptic, isn't it pure eloquence to so easily bring close to the common people's understanding these profound truths, which are so distant from everyone? For eloquence is to speak conformably to any given situation. Dwell on this. The answer to the second doubt, which is the Qur'an's vagueness concerning the shaping of creation, although the modern sciences are explicit. Understand that included in the tree of the world is the desire to be perfected, out of which branches the inclination to progress found in man. The inclination to progress resembles a seed that sprouts and grows as a result of numerous experiences, and takes form and expands through the meeting of minds and exchange of ideas, and produces the fruits of successive sciences, whereby the following can arise only after the previous one has come into being, and the previous one can only be preliminary to the subsequent one after it has been universally accepted. Consequently, if 10 centuries ago a person wanted to teach science, remembering that sciences are born only as the result of numerous experiments, and call people to it, all he would have done would have been to confuse their minds and cause them to fall into error. For instance, if the Qur'an had said, "O people, behold the stationary sun and rotating earth and the swarming millions of living beings in creation," then conceive of the Maker's grandeur. It would have driven the people either to deny or to deceive themselves or to compete with it. Note: one time when I was ill, in a state between sleeping and waking, the following occurred to me about, "And the sun runs its course to a place appointed, that it turns in its appointed place so that the solar system can be upheld. That is, by rotating the sun generates the force of attraction gravity which holds the solar system in its order. Otherwise, it would fall apart." This sleepy footnote is subtle and meaningful. Said Nursi. For because of their superficial view, rather their false view, they look on the earth as self-evidently flat and the sun as rotating. So, indeed, to confuse people's minds, especially over the period of 1,000 years, just to satisfy a few people of our times, would have been contrary to wise guidance and opposed to the spirit of eloquence. Friend, don't assume that you can draw an analogy between theoretical future matters and the conditions of the hereafter. That is, don't suppose that the matters of the hereafter and its conditions, which are unknown to us, are similar to theoretical matters that will be discovered in the future. For, since the external senses cannot perceive any aspect of the matters of the hereafter, they remain within the bounds of the possible and may be believed in confidently. What they clearly require is to be elucidated. However, when it comes to our subject, the discoveries of science, since, in the view of the people of those times, they were outside the bounds of possibility and probability, and due to their erroneous perceptions, what they thought to be true was self-evident. What was required in the view of eloquence was for those discoveries to be mentioned in vague and general terms out of respect for the people's feelings, and so as not to confuse their minds. Nevertheless, the Qur'an indicates, hints at, and makes allusion to the truth, and opens the door to minds and bids them enter by planting signs and associated meanings. Friend, if you are fair-minded, reflect on the rule, speak to people in accordance with their level of understanding, and understand that, since the times and environments of those people had not equipped them mentally, they would have been unable to support or sustain such matters as the discoveries of science, which were later born of the meeting of minds and conjunction of ideas, and concede that the Qur'an's choosing to be vague and general is pure eloquence and evidence of its miraculousness. The answer to the third doubt, which is some of the literal meanings of verses tending to be contrary to rational evidences and the findings of science. Consider this. The Qur'an's main aim is to instruct the mass of people about its four basic principles, which are proof of the single Maker, prophethood, the resurrection of the dead, and justice. Thus, its mention of the universe is secondary and digressive for purposes of deduction, for it was not revealed to teach geography or cosmography. It mentions the universe in order to conclude from the divine art in it and its unique order the existence of the true orderer, may his glory be exalted. It's the fact that traces of art, purpose, and order are to be seen in all things, but, However, they were formed does not concern us, since it is unconnected with the main aim. For, seeing that the Qur'an speaks of beings for purposes of deduction, and seeing that their existence has to be known before the proposition, and seeing that the evidence has to be clear, how could guidance and eloquence not make it imperative that the Qur'an should incline with some of its apparent or literal meanings towards their emotional views and literary knowledge, making concessions to them? Such literal meanings are not for affirming or indicating their knowledge, but are elusive or associative expressions. In any event, the Qur'an includes signs and indications for investigators of the truth that point to the truth. For example, suppose when presenting its arguments, the Qur'an had said, "O people, ponder over the sun's being stationary, although it apparently moves, and the earth's daily and annual rotations, although it is apparently stationary. Reflect on the extraordinary gravity holding the stars in place. Behold the marvels of electricity and the infinite combinations of the 70 elements and the messing together of uncountable organisms in a droplet of water, and know that Allah is powerful over all things." Had it spoken thus, the evidence would have been more obscure and far less clear than what was being claimed, and that is opposed to the rules of deduction. Moreover, since the literal meanings of verses that apparently tend to contradict signs are elusive, their meanings are not either true or false, that is, their meanings should not be taken literally. Don't you see that the alif in the word Ka'ala denotes lightness, so it makes no difference whether its root was ya or waw, kaf or kaf. In short, since the Qur'an was revealed for all people of all times, these 3 points which are thought to raise doubts are evidence of its miraculousness. I swear by Allah, who taught the miraculous Qur'an, that the view of the bringer of good news and warner and his critical insight were too fine, brilliant, and penetrating to confuse truth and illusion, and his way of truth was too elevated, pure, and exalted to deceive people or mislead them. The 7th matter. The books of the Prophet's biography and works of history have described numerous of his perceptible miracles and the famous wonders he performed in the presence of the people, and these have been commented on by authoritative scholars. To teach what is already known would be superfluous, so we refer detailed discussion to their books, and here we shall summarize the miracles by mentioning only their categories. Concerning the Prophet's manifest wonders, although each of them has been transmitted from only one source, and there is no consensus concerning them as a type, and there being many in these categories, they may be considered as being unanimously reported in respect of their meanings, mutawatir bil mana. They consist of 3 categories. The first, the various paranormal events that took place before the prophetic mission, but which were related to it, called irhasat. This included the Zoroastrians' fire being extinguished, the drying up of Lake Sava, the breaking into 2 of Chosroes, Pertko, and the prognostications of hidden voices. A person might even fancy that the center in which the messenger, upon whom the blessings and peace, was born was a highly sensitive wonder worker that had premonitions of his coming. The second category, the many predictions of the future, including the conquest of the territories of the Persian and Byzantine rules, the defeat of the Byzantines, the conquest of Mecca, and so on. As if the messenger's ethereal, winged spirit rent the bonds of fixed time and space, wrapped in the climes of the future, then told us what it had witnessed. The third category, wonders that could be pursued by the physical senses and were performed during the period of his challenging the existing order and calling to Islam. This included stones speaking, trees moving, the splitting of the moon, and water flowing from his fingers. Al-Zamahshari stated that there were as many as 1,000 miracles of this category. Some of these have been reported unanimously, but not literally. In fact, even those who denied the Qur'an could not tamper with the verse, and the moon is split. If you were to ask, something like the splitting of the moon should have become world famous and known by everyone, you would be told factors like differences in the time of its rising and the existence of clouds, and there being little observation of the skies at that time, and its occurrence at an hour people are inattentive during the night, and its occurring instantaneously, all mean that it was not seen by everyone or most people. Nevertheless, it has been established in narrations that it was witnessed by many caravans for which the moon's position was similar to that of Mecca. However, the chief of these miracles is the perspicuous Qur'an, whose proven miraculousness in 7 aspects is indicated by this verse. Friend, if you have understood these matters, listen now to what you will be told about the 3 aspects of the verse's positioning and ordering, the verse's positioning in relation to what preceded it, the positioning and relationships of some of its phrases, the positioning and relationships of the parts of the phrases.